The paper grocery bag slipped from my fingers before I fully process what I'm seeing. The jar of marinara shatters against my new tile floor, splashing red across the pristine white surface like blood at a crime scene. For 3 heartbeats, I stand frozen in my own doorway, keys still dangling from my hand. My mother and sister are inside my cottage that I showed them photos of only 3 days ago. My cottage whose address I deliberately hadn't shared. "What are you doing here?" My voice sounds distant, hollow. Liana whirls around, measuring tape extended between her hands. She's been measuring the guest bedroom, my home office. Her expression momentarily startled before settling into something irritatingly entitled. "Posie, you're home early." Mom straightens from where she's been rearranging my sofa and armchair, creating a configuration I hate. "We thought you'd be at work until 5. That doesn't answer my question." I step over the growing puddle of sauce, my shoes sticking slightly to the floor. "How did you get in here?" Mom waves dismissively. "Oh, I had a key made yesterday when I stopped by to congratulate you." The memory surfaces instantly. Mom asking to use the bathroom during her brief visit. Her purse unexpectedly left behind when she went down the hall. At the time, I thought nothing of it. You took my keys and copied them without asking. Tremor in my voice surprises me. "Don't be so dramatic, honey." Mom busies herself fluffing a throw pillow. "We're just seeing how to make this work for everyone." Make what work? The question forms but doesn't leave my mouth because suddenly I know. The realization crashes into me with the force of a physical blow. Fragments of childhood flash before me. Liana's 11th birthday with the hired clown and backyard carnival. While my own celebration that same year had been a store-bought cake in our living room. Mom's dismissive. "It's just not in the budget for you." Contrasted with the lavish spending for my sister, the pattern had never stopped. When I announced I was house hunting last month, Mom hadn't congratulated me. She'd called Liana immediately to discuss opportunities. "This is my home," I say. Each word carved from ice. Not yours, not ours. Mine. I cross to Liana and pluck the spare key from her hand where she's been fidgeting with it. Her fingers close reflexively, then release. "You can't be serious about living here alone." Liana says, her forehead creasing with practiced concern. "This place has 3 bedrooms. The kids need space. Your housing situation is not my problem." The steadiness in my voice surprises me. "After everything we've done for you," Mom's eyes widen, her hand pressed dramatically to her chest. "Your sister's children need bedrooms. Family helps, family Posie. You know that the familiar weight of obligation presses down. A lifetime of expectations that I'll sacrifice for Liana, because that's what I've always done." But something has shifted inside me. The trembling in my hands stops as clarity washes through me. "You have exactly 2 minutes to leave before I call the police." I point toward the door, arms steady. "You wouldn't dare." Mom's voice sharpens. 1 minute 50 seconds. They leave. Mom slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. I slide the deadbolt into place with a satisfying click. The phone rings 20 minutes later as I'm still cleaning marinara from the grout lines. Dad's name flashes on the screen. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" His voice booms the moment I answer. "Your mother is in tears. You're tearing this family apart with your selfishness." I say nothing, scrubbing harder at a stubborn red stain. "Liana needs help, Posie. That's what family does. You've always understood that before. Always understood. Always accommodated. Always sacrificed." "Not anymore," I whisper, but he's still shouting, not hearing me. After I hang up, I stare at the family photo on my mantel. Mom, Dad, Liana, with her perfect husband and 3 children, and me slightly off-center, smiling, the strained smile I've worn my entire life. For the first time, I see the pattern of sacrifice I've been conditioned to accept. I place the frame face down on the shelf. This house is mine. This life is mine, and I'm done giving pieces of it away. A day later, the Facebook notification pings while I'm sipping my morning coffee. A rare moment of peace 3 days after the marinara incident. Something about Liana tagging me. I tap the icon expecting another passive-aggressive family photo where I'm awkwardly positioned at the edge. What I find stops my breath. A post from 3 weeks ago before I'd even closed on my cottage shows. Liana's 3 children squeezed into their shared bedroom. The caption reads, "Kids are finally getting a bigger place soon. Blessed family first." My thumb hovers over the screen as I scroll to the comments. "Which bedroom does Ellie get?" asks one of Liana's friends. Liana's response, "The blue one with the bay window. Jack and Tyler will share the room across the hall." Mom thinks the third bedroom should stay a guest room in case Aunt Carol visits. My coffee mug slips from my fingers, splashing hot liquid across my bare feet. I barely noticed the burn. 3 weeks ago. They were planning this 3 weeks ago before I'd even signed my mortgage papers. I bolt to the bathroom, my stomach heaving as the magnitude hits me. This wasn't an impulsive idea after seeing my house. This was calculated, planned. They had been strategizing how to take over my home before I'd even purchased it. My phone buzzes with a text notification as I rinse my mouth. It's from Dad, but he's accidentally included me in a group message meant for Mom and Liana. "Don't worry about Posie's tantrum. Mom has written. She'll give in once you're settled." She always does. The shaking starts in my hands and spreads until my whole body trembles against the cool bathroom tile. She always does. 3 words that summarize my entire life. The family dinner invitation arrives via text the next evening. We need to talk about a solution. Dad writes, "Your mother's making pot roast. 7:00 p.m. I should refuse." Every instinct screams to stay away, but some withered, hopeful part of me wonders if maybe, just maybe, they've reconsidered. When I arrive, the table is already set with Mom's good china. Dad, Mom, and Liana sit clustered on one side, an empty chair waiting for me on the other. The division couldn't be more obvious if they'd drawn a line down the middle. Posie Mom says, her smile tight, "We're so glad you could join us." Before I can respond, Dad slides a manila folder across the table. We found the perfect solution. Inside are printouts of 5-bedroom houses, all within 2 miles of Liana's children's school. Each listing has been annotated with notes like perfect playroom and good backyard for the kids. "These are lovely," I say carefully. "For Liana and Mark." Dad clears his throat. "For all of you, together. We've already talked to your bank." Mom adds, stirring her iced tea. "Transferring your mortgage to a different property is quite simple. The difference in price would be manageable if everyone contributes." My mouth goes dry. "You contacted my bank?" "Just preliminary discussions," Mom says, waving away my concern like an annoying fly. "Your furniture won't all fit, of course," Liana chimes in. "But we could sell the extra pieces. We'll need space for the kids' bunk beds." The front door opens and Mark strolls in, late as usual. He nods at me before turning to Dad. "I was thinking about the garage spaces. The left side would work better for my truck if Posie doesn't mind parking on the street. The casual way they're dividing my property, a home they've never contributed a penny toward, leaves me speechless." My hands curl into fists beneath the table. Posie Dad says, his voice dropping into the serious tone he used when I was a child and had disappointed him. "Refusing to help would show you don't really care about being part of this family." Mom reaches across the table, not quite touching my hand. "Think about your relationship with your nieces and nephew. Children remember who was there for them. Everyone knows family comes first in this town," Liana adds, her eyes narrowing. "What would people think if they knew you had all that space while your sister's children are crammed into one room?" The weight of their expectations presses against my chest. For years, my entire identity in this family has been Liana's supportive sister, never just Posie with my own dreams and needs. "I spoke with Robert at your office." Dad mentions casually, as if he hasn't just crossed yet another boundary. "He understands your family crisis might require some flexibility in your schedule to help Liana with the move." After all we've done, Mom adds, her voice trembling with practiced emotion, providing a home for you all those years. The memory surfaces writing rent checks every month throughout college while living in their basement, watching them pay Liana's full tuition and apartment costs without question. The silence stretches as they wait for my capitulation. The familiar script. Posie protests. Family pressures. Posie surrenders. She always does. But something has shifted inside me since finding them in my house. The pattern is suddenly visible, like one of those magic eye pictures that snaps into focus after years of just seeing random dots. I stand carefully, placing my napkin beside my untouched plate. Watch me not help. I say, my voice steadier than I feel. I walk out, ignoring their calls to return their demands to sit back down and be reasonable. In my car, the phone begins buzzing with texts and calls. I switch it to silent. As I drive home that night, my phone lighting up with angry messages. I wonder if standing my ground is worth potentially losing my family. Should I maintain this boundary at all costs, or find some compromise that wouldn't completely sacrifice my independence? The house was mine, but was complete separation the only way to protect it? The thought of compromise flickers and dies as I remember the Facebook post. They never intended to ask. They planned to take. Some boundaries can't be partial. Sometimes the only protection is a wall. 3 days after the dinner, ambush notifications ping my phone like tiny detonations. Each one jolts me from whatever momentary peace I've managed to find. I make the mistake of looking at Liana's latest Facebook post, her children squeezed onto a pull-out sofa, faces arranged in exaggerated pouts. The caption reads, "When family abandonment means your kids don't have proper bedrooms, family first unless you're selfish, apparently." My stomach twists as I scroll through the sympathetic comments. People I've known since childhood offer prayers and support. 3 different church ladies promise to speak to me about Christian family values. My finger hovers over the reply button. But what could I possibly say that wouldn't pour gasoline on this fire? My phone buzzes with a text from Mrs. Hatcher, my 3rd grade teacher. "Your mother showed me pictures of your beautiful home. So much space for just one person. I raised 4 children in half that size." I set the phone face down on my kitchen counter and grip the edge until my knuckles whiten. The betrayal burns like acid in my throat. Not just from Liana, who I've come to expect this from, but from Mom. She's plastered photos of my house online with captions about forgetting where you came from and what happens when success goes to your head. The doorbell rings, sending my heart rate skyrocketing. Through the peephole, I spot Pastor Williams on my front step, Bible tucked under his arm. This isn't a coincidence. This is a coordinated attack. "I'm sorry I'm not available for visitors today," I call through the door. "Posie Adams, I've known you since you were in Sunday school. Your family is concerned, and as your spiritual advisor, I didn't request spiritual advice." I interrupt, surprising myself with the firmness in my voice. "Please respect my privacy." His sigh carries through the door. "I'll be, praying for your heart to soften." After he leaves, I sit at my kitchen table and make a list of everything that's happened in the week since I threw my family out of my house. The scale of their retaliation is becoming clearer and more frightening. Yesterday, I discovered the first concrete evidence of how far they're willing to go. My mortgage statement hadn't arrived, so I called the bank. "We've been sending it to your updated address." The representative explained, "Your parents contacted us about forwarding your financial documents to their home for safekeeping." The violation leaves me breathless. They nearly succeeded, would have, if I hadn't been vigilant about my payments. What else have they diverted? What other pieces of my life are they quietly commandeering? Sleep has become almost impossible. I lie awake cataloging potential vulnerabilities, jumping at every creak and rustle outside my windows. The thought of checking my mail each day fills me with dread. What new boundary will they have crossed? What fresh guilt trip will be waiting? This morning I received an email from my homeowners association. My parents had contacted them with concerns about commercial activity at my address. A complete fabrication, but one that required me to respond with formal documentation proving I work from home occasionally but don't run a business. The cost of this estrangement keeps mounting. But the alternative, a lifetime of exploitation of being seen as nothing more than Liana's support system, seems unbearable now that I've glimpsed freedom. I start small, changing passwords, setting up mail forwarding directly to my workplace, installing security cameras at every entrance. I document each unwanted contact, each social media post, each attempt to access my personal information. The methodical process steadies my shaking hands. When the security company finishes installing my new system, I feel a strange blend of sadness and relief. My home, the place that was supposed to represent my independence, now resembles a fortress. The next morning, a small miracle appears on my desk at work. A loaf of homemade bread wrapped in brown paper with a note tucked beneath the twine. Sorry I blabbed about your new place. Not everyone thinks you're wrong. Some of us wish we'd been brave enough to set boundaries years ago, Marcy. I hadn't realized how isolated I'd been feeling until that small gesture of support brings tears to my eyes. The moment of peace is short-lived. That evening, I pull into my driveway to find Liana's SUV parked in front. Through my front window, I can see shadows moving inside my house. The familiar surge of violation is accompanied by something new. Cold crystalline anger. This time, I don't hesitate. I call the police from my car, watching as neighbors peek from behind curtains at the unfolding drama. By the time the officer arrives, my family has noticed me sitting in my driveway. They spill onto the front porch. Mom's face contorted with self-righteous indignation. Dad's reamed with anger. Liana clutching her purse to her chest like a shield. She's throwing her own family onto the street. Liana cries dramatically as the officer approaches. We were just visiting. With what key, I ask, calmly showing the officer my security camera footage on my phone. I didn't give you permission to enter my home. Mom steps forward, eyes darting toward the gathering neighbors. How could you call the police on your own blood? What will people think? Something shifts inside me. The question that has controlled my entire life. What will people think suddenly seems absurdly irrelevant. I don't care what they think, I say, my voice steady. I care what I think, and I think this ends today. The officer escorts them from my property with a warning about trespassing. As they drive away, I realize something profound. I've spent my entire life afraid of disappointing my family, measuring my worth by their approval. But I've never considered how consistently they've disappointed me, how little they've valued my independence, my choices, my right to a life that isn't defined by what I can give them. The next day, Dave, a friend from college who now practices family law, helps me draft a formal cease and desist letter. They're counting on your guilt. He tells me as we review the document, they've weaponized it your whole life. When Liana shows up at my workplace the following week, her eyes swollen from theatrical crying, my coworkers form an unexpected protective barrier. Marcy intercepts her at the front desk. 2 others happen to join me for lunch when Liana tries to ambush me in the parking lot. The contrast is stark. These people who owe me nothing respect my boundaries without question, while my family who should protect me tramples every line I draw. With each day, I find my voice growing stronger. No becomes easier to say. This doesn't work for me. Rolls off my tongue without apology. The words, I've made my decision, no longer feel like a betrayal. At home, I change all the locks, upgrade my security system with door cameras that send alerts to my phone. I gather financial records, text messages, social media posts, a paper trail documenting years of exploitation. The folder grows thick with evidence I hope never to need, but feel safer having. The notification appears on my phone while I'm in a meeting 2 days later. The doorbell camera shows my mother on my front step, trying a key in my lock while glancing nervously over her shoulder. The key doesn't work. I've changed the locks twice since the last confrontation. Her expression darkens as she tries again, then reaches into her purse for what appears to be another key. My heart pounds as I watch the footage. This isn't over. This is just beginning. I spend my Sunday afternoon assembling evidence like puzzle pieces on my dining room table. Every trespass, every manipulation, every lie documented with military precision. The security camera footage plays on my laptop showing Mom trying 3 different keys in my front door yesterday while I was at work. I add the timestamp to my spreadsheet and feel a curl of satisfaction rather than the usual guilt. This looks comprehensive, Dave says, adjusting his reading glasses as he reviews my documentation. My lawyer friend has squeezed me into his Sunday, bringing the scent of coffee and legal pads into my living room. The cease and desist letter should be ready tomorrow. Will you be okay delivering it yourself? I need to do this myself. I add the mortgage company's call recording to a labeled folder. The representative's voice still rings in my ears. We spoke with someone claiming to be your mother about transferring your mortgage to another property. We informed her this wasn't possible without your direct authorization. My therapist Judith's advice guides my hand as I organize everything. Document, don't engage. Facts, not emotions. Boundaries, not arguments. Monday morning, I place the certified letter in my mother's hands. She doesn't open it, just stares at me with wounded eyes, as if I've betrayed her by protecting myself. You'll regret this, she whispers, but takes the envelope. 3 days pass in blessed silence. No calls, no texts, no unexpected visits. I sleep through the night for the first time in weeks. Thursday brings the inevitable escalation. I'm reviewing code at my desk when Marcy from accounting appears at my cubicle, eyes wide. Your parents are in the lobby, she whispers. They told reception your sister was in an accident, and they need you immediately. Cold dread washes through me until I spot the text from Liana complaining about her kids' school lunches time-stamped 2 minutes ago. I find my parents arguing with our receptionist. Mom dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue while Dad demands I be brought out immediately. Family emergency. He barks at the young man behind the desk. Her sister's been hurt. I just texted with Liana. I say, stepping into view. My voice remains steady despite the tremor in my hands. She's fine. Mom drops the tissue. Posie, thank goodness. We've been so worried. Miss Adams? My boss appears beside me, her expression carefully neutral. Is everything all right? Dad attempts his charming smile. Family matter. We'll just borrow Posie for a bit. My family appears to be lying about a medical emergency to disrupt my workday. I tell my boss loud enough for the entire reception area to hear. I apologize for the disturbance. Security escorts them out while I return to my desk, ignoring the stares. That evening, I discover Liana's latest attack, a GoFundMe page titled, Housing Crisis, Help My Children Have a Home with my photo prominently featured. One email to the platform's legal department citing unauthorized use of my image, and the campaign disappears by morning. My father's voicemail that night slips from rage into accidental truth. You ungrateful little. Do you know what you've done? We had it all planned out. We were going to move in whether you liked it or not. And now you've embarrassed your mother in front of I save the recording with a grim smile. When my company announces an opening at their new branch in Colorado Springs, I find myself weighing a promising opportunity against running away from conflict. Would moving mean letting them win? Or was it my chance for a fresh start beyond their reach? My support system rallies around me like a protective wall. Dave sends a formal warning to my family outlining the legal consequences of continued harassment. Judith helps me craft responses that stay firmly factual without engaging their emotional bait. My boss offers flexible hours during what she calls this transitional period, her eyes knowing but never pitying. Your house needs better security, says Tara, my realtor friend, walking the perimeter of my property. Motion-sensing lights here and reinforce this back door. I'd expected to feel alone in this fight. Instead, I've discovered allies I never realized I had. People who value my boundaries and recognize my family's toxicity. The tide begins to turn. Aunt Susan calls to ask hesitantly about the other side of the story. Cousin Mike messages that he doesn't think it's right what they're asking. Even Liana's perfect social media campaign backfires when friends comment, "Why can't you and Mark support your own family, and isn't Posie single? Why should she house your kids?" Their facade is cracking, revealing the selfishness beneath. The job offer letter arrives in my email Friday afternoon. Colorado Springs branch manager glows on my screen like a beacon. Something loosens in my chest. Possibility, perhaps, or freedom. For the first time in weeks, I smile without reservation. A week later at home, the cherry pie sits on my kitchen counter like a crimson trap. Mom stands beside it, fingers tapping against the granite in a rhythm I've known since childhood. The beat of her impatience when I'm not immediately agreeing to her plans. "It's your favorite," she says, though cherry has always been Liana's preference, not mine. I've corrected her on this fact at least 20 times over the years. Her eyes keep darting to the security camera mounted near my entryway. The blinking red light seems to make her nervous, which gives me a small measure of satisfaction. "I think we got off on the wrong foot with all this," Mom says, her voice unnaturally pleasant. She's rehearsed this. I can tell by the way she keeps shifting her weight from one foot to the other, the way she did before parent-teacher conferences when I was young. "Your father and I have been thinking, and we've come up with the perfect compromise." I wasn't aware we were negotiating, I say, keeping my distance. The kitchen island between us feels like necessary protection. Mom pulls a folder from her oversized purse. "We found some lovely properties just 15 minutes from here. 5 bedrooms, plenty of space." She slides several glossy listings toward me. "You sell this cottage. We all move into one of these. There's even a mother-in-law suite for Liana's family." I flip through the listings, noting the prices that are triple what my cottage cost. "And how exactly would this work financially?" "Well, you'd get the master bedroom, of course." She smiles as if offering me a tremendous gift. "We've already toured 3 of them. The realtor was very accommodating when we explained the situation." "You toured houses in my name?" The calm in my voice surprises even me. Mom waves dismissively. "We needed to move quickly. The Henderson's daughter is also looking in that neighborhood." She leans forward, voice dropping. "Listen, Posie, if you're going to be difficult about this, we can always contest the ownership. You couldn't possibly have afforded this place without family help." "Family help?" The words taste bitter. "You mean the full rent I paid while living at home during college? Or perhaps you're referring to the student loans I'm still paying off while Liana's education was fully funded." Mom's face hardens. "Don't be ungrateful." I walk to my office without responding and return with an envelope. I place it on the counter between us next to her untouched pie. "What's this?" She doesn't reach for it. "It's a job offer from our company's new branch in Arizona." I push it toward her. "I accepted it last week." Her hand freezes mid-tap. "Arizona. I'm selling the cottage." I watch her face brighten before adding and moving to Tucson next month. The color drains from her face. "But what about Liana?" "Her housing situation is not my concern." I open a drawer and pull out a thick manila folder. I've been gathering some interesting documentation. I spread the contents across my counter. Financial records showing my paid rent throughout college alongside Liana's fully funded education. Birthday expenditure comparisons showing the thousands spent on her celebrations versus the bare minimum for mine. Loan papers for the cars they bought her while I saved for my used Honda. What is this supposed to be? Mom's voice has lost its rehearsed quality. Evidence. I pull out my phone and tap the screen. And here's my security footage showing 17 unauthorized entry attempts on my property. Mom stares at the screen, watching herself and Liana testing keys in my lock, peering through windows, even once bringing a locksmith who thankfully refused the job. "I'm not running away," I say, gathering the papers. "I'm running towards something better, a life where I'm valued, not just useful." "Your father will be furious," she whispers. But there's a new uncertainty in her voice. I'm counting on it. 3 days later, I arrive at my parents' house for what they've built as a family meeting to resolve the housing situation. The driveway is full. My aunt's car, my cousin's SUV, even my grandmother's ancient Buick. The gang's all here to witness my surrender. I take a deep breath before entering folder tucked securely under my arm. The conversation in the living room halts when I step inside. Liana sits on the couch between my parents, a united front. The extended family is arranged in a loose semicircle, an audience for the performance. There she is, Dad says, standing with a forced smile. We were just about to explain our solution to everyone. Actually, I say, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. I have an announcement first. I place my folder on the coffee table and open it to reveal the listing for my cottage, complete with professional photographs and a bright red for sale banner across the top. My house goes on the market Monday, I say, and I've accepted a position with my company's Arizona branch. I'm moving next month. The silence stretches for 3 heartbeats before Liana's shriek shatters it. But what about us? Where are we supposed to go? I meet her gaze steadily. The same place you've been living. The same place. You'd still be if you hadn't tried to take what's mine. Dad stands, face weening. This is how you abandon your family after everything we've done for you. Everything you've done. I pull out copies of my documentation, passing them to my grandmother and aunt. Here's a record of what you've actually done. Different rules for different daughters, different support, different expectations. My aunt's eyes widen as she scans the papers. You made her pay rent during college while paying for Liana's apartment. It built character, Dad snaps. But his confidence wavers as more family members begin examining the evidence. You should see the security footage, I add loud enough for everyone to hear. Them trying to break into my house while I'm at work, calling my mortgage company, pretending to be me, creating a GoFundMe claiming I was in financial distress. Grandmother's hand covers her mouth. Is this true? My parents' silence is answer enough. As I drive home that evening, my phone buzzes with texts, not from my parents or Liana, but from my aunt, my cousins, my grandmother, words of support, questions about whether they'd been misled about other family matters over the years. The beginning of cracks in the family mythology. 2 days later, my realtor calls with news that feels like both victory and farewell. You've got an offer already, she says, $20,000 over, asking cash with a 30-day close. I'll take it, I tell her without hesitation. One more thing, she adds. Do you want to keep the spare keys? Or should I discard them? I think of all the keys that have been copied without my permission, all the boundaries crossed. Discard them, I say. I won't need them where I'm going. As I hang up, I hear whispers that my parents have already approached my cousin Thomas about his guest house. The cycle continues, but without me in it. I wonder briefly if any relationship with my family can be salvaged after I move, whether distance might actually make healing possible. But that's a question for another day. Today I have boxes to pack and a new life to build, one that's entirely my own. A year later, the morning sun streams through windows that have no curtains because I haven't decided what style I want yet. My furniture sits exactly where I placed it, not where someone else thought it should go. The wall beside my desk blooms with photographs. Me atop a mountain in Colorado, shaking hands with the CEO after my promotion, standing proudly in front of this house on closing day. Not a single picture shows my family. My phone rests on the counter, its screen occasionally lighting up with notifications. A year ago, I would have lunged for it, heart racing at the possibility of another accusation or demand. Now I glance at it with casual indifference. Unknown numbers route straight to voicemail, and several familiar ones too. Outside, through the kitchen window, my garden catches the morning light. Rows of basil, thyme, and rosemary herbs Mom always claimed would overwhelm her delicate palate thrive in neat beds. Brilliant orange marigolds border the walkway, their pungent scent a childhood favorite. I was never allowed to plant near the house. Too common. Mom had said when I was 10. We're putting in roses instead. I bite into a fresh strawberry from my own patch and smile at the sweetness. The doorbell rings precisely at noon. Friends file in carrying gift bags and platters, their faces bright with genuine happiness to see me. No one has an agenda beyond celebration. Happy birthday. Posie calls Elaine my colleague turned friend, setting down a bakery box. Apple pie as requested. Not cake asks Thomas, another coworker who's driven 2 hours to be here. I've always preferred pie. I answer, though, simple truth filling me with unexpected satisfaction, especially apple. For decades, I dutifully blown out candles on chocolate cake because Liana loved it. Mom always said making 2 desserts was wasteful when we could share. Elaine arranges candles on the pie while I pour wine into glasses. The stemware I chose because I liked it, not because it matched someone else's taste. What should we toast to, asked Sophia, the neighbor who brought me homemade bread when I moved in. To building homes, not just houses, I say, raising my glass. And to the family we choose. The words settle warm in my chest as we clink glasses. On the wall near my door hangs a simple wooden key hook with just one key. Line. No spare hidden for emergencies. No copy held by anyone else. Later, after everyone leaves, I find myself thinking about Jared, the new engineer at work. Yesterday, I spotted him shrinking into himself as our project manager dismissed his ideas. The familiar posture hit me like a punch to the gut, the same way I used to make myself smaller around my family. Actually, I'd said, interrupting the manager, Jared's approach could save us significant testing time. Let's hear more. The surprise and gratitude in his eyes reminded me of my own reflection the day I finally stood up to my family. My phone buzzes with a text from Michael, the landscape architect I've been seeing for a month. He respects my boundaries with a reverence that once would have felt foreign, but now feels right. Still on for hiking Saturday. The message reads. I smile as I type back. Absolutely. Before turning in, I scroll through my phone gallery and pause at an old family photo, everyone grouped tightly together. Me slightly out of frame as usual. After a moment's hesitation, I delete it and replace it with a picture of my front door painted the bold red I'd always wanted. My cousin Brenda texts occasionally now. Last week, my uncle called to check in. These tentative connections with extended family happen on my terms with clear boundaries that they've learned to respect. As I settle into bed in my quiet house, I wonder whether complete separation from my parents and Liana was necessary for healing, or if someday I could rebuild limited contact on my terms. What would you do? Maintain the distance that brought peace or attempt to create a new, more balanced relationship from the ashes of the old. For tonight, I'm content with the life I've built. Story 2. The banging started soft, a dull thud against wood that pulled me from the edge of sleep like a fishhook. I lay still in the darkness of my duplex, disoriented, my body heavy with the exhaustion of a 12-hour ER shift. The sound came again. 3 deliberate knocks. Then silence. I blinked at the ceiling, my breath visible in the cold air. The heating unit had cycled off hours ago, and the room felt like a morgue. Outside, wind screamed against the windows, rattling the panes in their frames. The weather report had warned of a winter storm moving in, temperatures dropping into the low 20s, wind chill pushing toward 0. The banging resumed, harder now, more urgent. I threw off the blankets and my skin pebbled instantly. The floor was ice against my bare feet as I stumbled toward the door, grabbing my phone from the nightstand. The screen flashed 4:32 a.m. in harsh white numbers. My heart kicked into a faster rhythm. Nobody knocked on doors at this hour with good news. I flicked on the porch light and pulled the door open. Then I froze. Dean stood on my doorstep, his 11-year-old frame bent forward under the weight of his sister on his back. Hannah's small arms were wrapped loosely around his neck, her head lolling against his shoulder. Dean's face was bone white, his lips tinged purple, eyes glassy with the vacant stare of severe cold exposure. He wore long pajama pants soaked through at the knees. Sneakers dark with ice melt. No socks. A filthy garage rug, the kind mechanics used to catch oil drips, was draped over his shoulders, crusted with grease stains and stiffening in the frigid air. Hannah wasn't moving. My training kicked in before conscious thought could catch up. I registered the cyanosis first. Her lips and fingernails were blue-gray. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, rapid movements. each breath accompanied by a harsh stridor that sounded like air being forced through a straw. She was wearing a pink princess nightgown thin as tissue paper, but Dean's heavy winter coat had been wrapped around her small body. He'd given her his coat inside now. My voice came out steady, clinical. I reached for Hannah, lifting her from Dean's back. She was frighteningly light, her skin cold and waxy under my fingers. Dean's legs buckled the moment the weight came off him, and he collapsed onto my floor in a boneless heap, his legs too numb to hold him. I carried Hannah to the couch, laying her down while my mind ran through protocols like a checklist. Hypothermia. Severe core temperature likely below 95 degrees. Respiratory distress. Possible CRO, possible pneumonia, airway compromised. I grabbed every blanket within reach, wrapping her carefully, avoiding the extremities. Warm the core first. Warm the arteries. Rapid rewarming of frozen limbs could send cold blood flooding back to the heart and trigger cardiac arrest. Her breathing was getting worse. I ran to the bathroom, yanking open the cabinet where I kept my personal medical supplies, a habit from years of night shifts and emergencies. The nebulizer was still in its box, unopened. I'd bought it 6 months ago when a patient's family couldn't afford one. Never thought I'd need it for my own niece. My hands shook as I assembled the mask, filled the chamber with saline, and fitted it over Hannah's small face. The machine hummed to life, mist flowing into her airway. Her stridor eased slightly, the desperate wee dropping half an octave. Dean was still on the floor near the door, curled on his side, shivering so violently his teeth clattered. I grabbed my phone, hands trembling now, not from cold, but from rage so pure it felt like ice water in my veins. I hit 911 and put it on speaker. My fingers already moving back to Hannah to adjust the nebulizer angle. 911. What's your emergency? This is Nurse Willow Hart. License number RN4022. My voice was glass smooth. Professional. Reporting 2 pediatric medical emergencies at a private residence. Suspected severe child neglect. I need an ambulance and police immediately. 2 children, ages 11 and 7. Hypothermic, 1 with acute respiratory distress. Address is 447 Maple Grove Unit B. Ambulance is dispatched. Stay on the line. I set the phone down and moved to Dean. His eyes tracked me, but he couldn't speak. His jaw locked from the cold. I pulled him away from the door, wrapped him in my comforter, tucked it tight around his torso. Then I went to the kitchen, grabbed the carton of chocolate milk from the fridge, poured it into a mug, and put it in the microwave for 40 seconds. Not too hot. Hot enough to warm his core from the inside without scalding his throat. The microwave beeped. I tested the temperature against my wrist, warm but not burning, and brought it to Dean with a straw. He took small sips, his hands too stiff to grip the mug. Each swallow made his face twist in pain as warmth met frozen tissue. I knelt beside him, one hand holding the mug, the other checking Hannah's pulse, thin and rapid. But there my brain cataloged injuries with clinical detachment. Frostbite on Dean's toes, visible through the holes in his soaked sneakers. Malnutrition. Both children were underweight, cheekbones, 2 prominent eyes sunken. Hannah's fingernails were dirty, ragged. Dean's hair was matted, greasy. These were my brother's children. Joshua and Jane lived in a mansion in Riverside Heights. 5 bedrooms, heated floors, an expensive wine collection, and they'd sent their children out into a winter storm in pajamas. My hand tightened on the milk carton until it crumpled slightly. Dean flinched, and I forced myself to loosen my grip. This wasn't the time. Later there would be time for rage. Right now, I was a nurse. Right now, these children needed me steady. Sirens cut through the wind outside, distant at first, then louder red and blue lights washing across my windows. I looked down at Dean, still wrapped in my comforter, his eyes ancient in his child's face. Those eyes had seen too much, understood too much. They held no surprise at being here, no confusion, just a weary resignation that broke something in my chest. The paramedics would ask questions, the police would ask questions, and I would answer every single one because this wasn't over. This was just beginning. The ambulance doors slammed shut behind us with a metallic finality that echoed in my chest. Hannah lay strapped to the gurney, her small face obscured by an oxygen mask, fogging with each labored breath. The rhythmic hiss of compressed air filled the cramped space as the EMT adjusted the flow rate, his gloved hands moving with practiced efficiency. I sat on the bench beside Dean, my hand wrapped around his smaller one. His fingers were still cold despite the thermal blankets cocooning him. The boy stared at the ceiling of the ambulance, his eyes tracking the LED strips overhead with that same unsettling flatness I'd seen at my door. "Can you tell me what happened tonight?" I kept my voice low, clinical, the same tone I used when coaxing information from trauma patients who needed to talk but couldn't bear to be pushed. Dean's throat worked. For a moment I thought he wouldn't answer. Then his lips parted, and words began to spill out in that same monotone whisper that made my skin crawl. Mom and Dad left at 5 o'clock. There was a party, a casino opening. Dad said they needed to beat the cold front. He paused, swallowing. They told us to order pizza and go to bed by 9 o'clock. The EMT's hands stilled for half a second on Hannah's farine before resuming their work. I felt my jaw tighten but kept my expression neutral. At 10 o'clock, we noticed Snow wasn't inside. I put on my pajamas and my winter coat and went to look in the backyard. Hannah was supposed to wait in the living room. His voice cracked slightly. She got impatient. She only had her nightgown and that thin jacket. She didn't understand how cold it was. I watched his profile as he spoke. 11 years old and already carrying the weight of protecting his sister like armor he couldn't remove. The wind caught the door. It slammed shut. The smart lock engaged automatically. He said those last two words with a bitterness that sat wrong on a child's tongue. I tried the code. It didn't work. I called Dad, then Mom. No one answered. My free hand curled into a fist against my thigh. The vinyl bench crinkled beneath my scrubs. "Why didn't you call me?" Dean's eyes finally moved, sliding toward me with a guilt that carved something hollow in my chest. "I almost did. I had my thumb on your name, but the phone died." He drew a shaky breath. "Earlier, Hannah was crying for Mom. I let her play the restaurant game to calm her down. I forgot to charge it after." The monitor above Hannah's head beeped steadily. Each sound marked another second these children had survived despite every system designed to protect them failing. "It's not your fault, son." I squeezed his hand tighter, feeling the fragile bones beneath his skin. "None of this is your fault." His expression didn't change, but his fingers gripped mine back with surprising strength. We went to the garage. There was a rug, old and dusty, but I wrapped myself in it. I gave Hannah my coat. She needed it more. He spoke faster now, as if pushing the words out before they could stick in his throat. The temperature dropped. It kept dropping. The garage isn't heated. It got down to the same as outside, 23 degrees. The EMT made a soft sound that might have been a curse or a prayer. I couldn't tell which. After what felt like a long time, Hannah started wheezing. Bad. Really bad. I knew if we stayed there, she'd die. Dean's voice finally broke, cracking on that last word like ice under pressure. So I picked her up and I walked through the forest. The shortcut to your place, 1 mile. The ground was frozen and the air felt wet, and it just kept taking our heat, and you saved her life. My voice came out rougher than intended. You saved both your lives. I heard a sniffle from the front of the ambulance. The EMT turned away, suddenly very focused on checking equipment that didn't need checking. My own eyes burned, but I blinked the heat away. There would be time for that later. Right now, Dean needed me steady. The ambulance pulled into the bay at Mercy General at 5:30 a.m. The same fluorescent lights I'd worked under for 12 hours yesterday, now greeting me from the other side. Hannah was rushed to the ICU immediately. A team of nurses I recognized surrounding her gurney. Dean was transferred to a wheelchair, his frost-bitten feet too damaged to bear weight. Officer Jasper found me in the hallway outside the pediatric ward. He was young, maybe 25, with the kind of earnest face that hadn't yet learned to hide horror behind professional detachment. "Miss Hart, I need to take your statement." I recounted everything in the same clinical precision I'd used for charting the temperature of their skin, the color of Hannah's lips, the timeline Dean had given me. Jasper's pen moved across his notepad with increasing pressure, the tip nearly tearing through the paper by the time I finished, and the parents. His voice had gone flat. "Where are they now? I don't know. They left for a casino opening at 5 p.m. As far as I know, they haven't been contacted yet." Something cold moved behind his eyes. "Well, find them." At 8 a.m., as I was closely watching Dean resting, I heard the sharp click of heels on linoleum. I turned to see a woman in her 50s approaching her, charcoal blazer pressed to knife-edge perfection despite the early hour. Rimless glasses sat on a narrow nose, and her eyes moved over me with the same assessing quality I used when triaging patients. "Miss Hart." She didn't offer her hand. "Carla Evans, Child Protective Services." My stomach dropped. Carla moved past me into the room where Dean sat in his wheelchair, his damaged feet elevated and wrapped in sterile dressings. She observed him with the detached precision of someone conducting an inventory, her gaze cataloging every visible injury, every sign of neglect. Her pen scratched across a leather-bound notebook. After what felt like an hour, but was probably 3 minutes, she turned back to me. "Miss Hart, I am Carla Evans from CPS." Her voice carried no warmth, no sympathy, only the weight of bureaucratic authority. "Currently, the children are under emergency protective custody. I need to conduct a home study at your residence tomorrow. Our priority is kinship care, but safety regulations are strict." She paused, and those cold eyes pinned me in place. "If your home does not meet safety and hygiene standards immediately, the children will be placed into the foster care system upon discharge." The words hit like a physical blow. My duplex was small, cluttered with the chaos of a nurse working 60-hour weeks. I had no children's furniture, no safety locks on cabinets, no funds to transform my space into something suitable for 2 traumatized kids who'd just survived the worst night of their lives. But I couldn't let her see that panic. I forced my spine straight, channeling every ounce of the composure that had carried me through codes and traumas and patients bleeding out on tables. "I'll handle it." Carla's expression didn't change. She simply nodded, made another note, and walked away with that same precise clicking of heels. I stood in the hospital corridor as the sun began to rise somewhere beyond these walls I couldn't see. Around me, the familiar sounds of the morning shift change echoed, footsteps beeping monitors, the low murmur of report being given. I'd been part of this rhythm for years now. I was on the outside of it looking in. In this building, my niece fought for every breath while my nephew sat in a wheelchair, his legs still numb and without feeling. Somewhere out there, my brother and his wife were sleeping off champagne and roulette losses, unaware that their children had nearly died in the cold. And tomorrow, a woman with rimless glasses and a leather notebook would judge whether I was worthy of keeping these children safe. I had less than 24 hours to become someone I wasn't sure I knew how to be. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, indifferent to the weight settling onto my shoulders. I pulled out my phone, already mentally cataloging what I owned that I could sell, how fast I could make it happen, whether it would be enough. It had to be enough. I turned back toward Dean's room, squaring my shoulders against the impossible task ahead. The corridor stretched before me, sterile and endless, and I walked forward anyway. The phone in my hand buzzed with a notification, and I'd been expecting a response from the pawn shop on 5th Street. They'd take the diamond necklace my grandmother left me. They also told me I could bring the necklace in later this afternoon, so they could assess it in person and finalize the price. I stared at the screen, the blue light washing my face in the pre-dawn corridor, and felt nothing. Not grief, not regret, just the cold arithmetic of survival. I slipped the phone into my scrub pocket and turned back toward Dean's room. Through the small window in the door, I could see him in the wheelchair, his bandaged feet propped on the footrests, staring at the wall with those ancient eyes. A child who'd carried his dying sister through a frozen forest shouldn't look like that, empty waiting, resigned to whatever came next. I wouldn't let him wait anymore. Earlier at 6 to 10 a.m., the wind had teeth as Officer Jasper pulled his collar up and approached the Hart mansion. Its modern facade glowing with recessed lighting that probably cost more than his annual salary. Motion sensors flickered to life, illuminating the curved driveway where a Tesla sat covered in frost. Jasper pressed the video doorbell. A soft chime echoed somewhere inside the cavernous house. He waited 10 seconds, then pressed again. The small camera lens above the button blinked red. "Mr. Hart, this is Officer Jasper with the police department. We have confirmed there is no guardian at this address during hazardous weather conditions. Your children are in emergency care at Mercy General Hospital." He paused, letting the words sink into whatever device was capturing this moment. "You are required to present yourselves immediately to speak with Child Protective Services. Any delay will be recorded as child abandonment." Silence. Just the whistle of wind through the decorative columns flanking the entrance. 40 meters away, Joshua Hart been dozing in a leather chair at the high-stakes blackjack table. His chip stack diminished to a fraction of what he'd started with. Jane was somewhere near the slot machines, her fifth martini making her laugh too loud at something that wasn't funny. The notification made his stomach drop before he even opened it. Front door motion detected. He fumbled with his phone, nearly dropping it. The app loaded slowly, always slowly when you needed it fast. Then the feed appeared. 2 uniformed officers standing on his porch, one speaking directly into the camera. He didn't hear the audio, didn't need to. The rigid posture, the official gestures, the squad car visible in the driveway. He knew exactly what this was. "Jane." His voice came out strangled. "Jane, we need to leave now." She looked up from her drink, mascara smudged beneath her eyes. "What? We just got here. The police are at the house." Her face went white beneath the foundation she'd applied 12 hours ago. The ER lobby smelled like burnt coffee and anxiety. I just finished checking my online bank account, calculating how fast I could liquidate everything when the automatic doors burst open at 9 o'clock sharp. Joshua came first, his expensive suit wrinkled like he'd slept in it. He had his hair stuck up on one side where he tried to smooth it down with wet fingers in the car. The Rolex caught the fluorescent light gleaming obscenely against his pale wrist. Jane stumbled in behind him, still wearing last night's evening gown. The silk dragged on the floor, stained along the hem. She rire of gin and cigarette smoke. "Where are they?" Jane's voice cracked across the waiting room. Heads turned. "Where are my babies?" A security guard stepped forward, hand raised. "Ma'am, you'll need to. I'm their mother." She lunged toward the nurse's station heels, clicking erratically. "Someone tell me where my children are right now." Joshua spotted me standing near the hallway entrance. For a moment our eyes met. I saw him calculate, watched his expression shift from panic to something sharper. He straightened his jacket and walked toward me with the confident stride of a man used to getting what he wanted. "Willow." He kept his voice low, reasonable, the voice he used when he needed something. "Thank God you were there. This whole thing, it's a terrible misunderstanding." I didn't move, didn't speak. He stepped closer, dropping his voice to a whisper. "I know how hard nursing school was for you. Those loans, what are you carrying now?" 60,070. His breath smelled like alcohol in desperation. "I'll pay them off. All of them today. Just tell the police this was an accident." My hands were shaking. I pressed them against my sides, felt the rough fabric of my scrubs ground me. "You locked your children outside in 23-degree weather." "We didn't lock, the smart lock malfunctioned. You know how technology is." His smile was practiced, polished. "Think about it, Willow. No more debt. You could finally breathe." "No." The word came out flat. "Final." His smile evaporated. "You're making a mistake. The only mistake was letting you near those kids for 11 years. His hand shot out and gripped my arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. Listen to me very carefully. I will hire the best attorney in this state. I will strip that nursing license right off your wall. You'll never work in healthcare again. You'll Joshua. Jane appeared at his elbow, her voice taking on that practiced sweetness she used when she wanted something. Maybe Willow just needs time to think about what's best for the children. A stable home, their own rooms, everything they're used to. She looked at me with eyes that were calculating beneath the smudged makeup. You live in a duplex, right? How many bedrooms? Something cold and sharp crystallized in my chest. I met her gaze and watched her confidence flicker. One, I said, but it's warmer than your garage. Joshua's face went purple. You self-righteous. He shoved me hard. I stumbled backward, my hip hitting the corner of a metal medical cart. The impact sent instruments clattering across the linoleum. Pain exploded through my elbow as I caught myself against the wall, my palms scraping against the rough concrete. My thick winter coat had absorbed some of the blow, but my arm throbbed where I'd connected with the cart's edge. Don't touch her. The voice was small but fierce. Dean actually stood gripping the arms of his wheelchair, his bandaged feet bare against the footrests. His face was white with pain, but his eyes burned. Don't you ever touch her. His voice cracked, rising to a scream. You left us. You left us to die, and you don't even care. Jane stared at her son like she'd never seen him before. Her mouth opened closed. No sound came out. Security. The nurse at the station was already on the phone. We need security. To the ER lobby immediately. 2 guards appeared within seconds. The police received the call. 5 minutes later, Officer Jasper appeared on the scene. Joshua tried to back away, hands raised, already shifting into his reasonable man persona. This is a family matter. My sister is clearly upset and making turnaround. Jasper's voice was ice hands behind your back. You can't be serious. I said. Turn around. Jasper pulled out his handcuffs. You're under arrest for assault and disorderly conduct. The metal clicked around Joshua's wrists with a sound that echoed through the silent lobby. His face went from purple to gray. Jane started crying real tears this time, or a convincing approximation. This is insane. We came here worried about our children, and she's trying to frame us. Jasper turned to her, his expression unchanging. Jane Hart, you're also under arrest for child endangerment and disorderly conduct. He nodded to another officer who'd appeared. Read them their rights. I stayed against the wall, cradling my scraped palm. My elbow throbbed. The officers led Joshua and Jane toward the exit. Joshua tried to turn back, tried to say something, but Jasper's hand on his shoulder kept him moving forward. Dean sank back into his wheelchair, his small body trembling. A nurse rushed over to check his feet, scolding him gently for standing. He didn't seem to hear her. He was looking at me. Are you okay? His voice was barely a whisper. I pushed off the wall and walked to him. My legs unsteady, knelt down so we were eye level. My palm stung where I'd scraped it, and I could already feel the bruise forming on my elbow, but none of it mattered. I'm okay, I said. Are you? He nodded. Then so quietly, I almost missed it. Thank you. I reached out and took his hand, the one that wasn't hooked to an IV, and held it, gently. His fingers were still cold. Behind us, the security cameras had captured everything. The hospital was already pulling the footage. My arm hurt, my palm was bleeding. I had less than 20 hours to make my duplex suitable for 2 children I barely knew. But as I watched the automatic doors close behind Joshua and Jane, their expensive clothes and empty promises disappearing into the cold morning light, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt strong. The next morning arrived under a cloak of dull winter light. Outside Joshua's mansion at 8:55 a.m., the house looked carefully styled, what Jane liked to call a symbol of their standard of living. Carla's sedan pulled up precisely at 9 o'clock. Officer Jasper followed in his patrol car. Neither vehicle belonged in this neighborhood of pristine driveways and ornamental trees. "Ready?" Carla asked, stepping out with a leather portfolio tucked under her arm. Officer Jasper entered the emergency code taken from Joshua's testimony, unaware that it wasn't the same code Dean had memorized. The door clicked open with a cheerful electronic chime, the same sound that had sealed 2 children outside in 23-degree weather. The foyer opened into a vated living room. Italian leather furniture formed perfect right angles around a glass coffee table. A wine cabinet stood against the far wall, backlit and temperature-controlled. In the cabinet sat 2 bottles of red, their labels turned outward like small badges of sophistication. Carla walked to the kitchen. Her heels clicked against marble tile. The Sub-Zero refrigerator hummed with expensive efficiency. Carla pulled it open. The interior light revealed 2 slices of pizza in a grease-stained box, the cheese spotted with blue mold. 3 energy drinks, a half-empty bottle of vodka. Nothing else. No milk, no vegetables, no bread, no evidence that children lived here at all. Officer Jasper opened the pantry. A bag of stale tortilla chips, a jar of olives. Carla uncapped her pen. She made a mark on her form. The scratch of ink on paper felt final. "Second floor," she said. Dean's room sat at the end of the hallway. The door hung slightly. A jar revealing walls painted a fashionable gray. A mattress lay directly on the hardwood floor. No frame, just a bare, fitted sheet and a thin blanket. In the corner, a professional ring light stood on a tripod, its cord snaking toward an outlet. Carla photographed everything. The empty space where a bed should be, the ring light, the closet containing 3 pairs of jeans and 4 shirts, all too small. They threw out his bed, she said, to make room for Jane's streaming setup. Officer Jasper's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Hannah's room was worse, a toddler bed she'd long outgrown. A pile of stuffed animals that looked like they'd been purchased in bulk and never touched. The window latch was broken, leaving a draft that made the curtains flutter. Carla made another mark on her form. Then another. They went back downstairs. Officer Jasper moved to the garage door and stepped outside. When he returned, an elderly man in a cardigan followed him inside. "Mr. Clint from next door?" He was always in his garden, pruning roses with careful attention. "Thank you for coming over, sir." Officer Jasper said, "You mentioned you had observed some concerning behavior." Mr. Clint's hands shook slightly as he removed his glasses and cleaned them on his sweater. "Those 2, the parents, they're party animals. Every weekend there's noise until 3 o'clock, 4 in the morning. White clock hands all over the driveway." Carla's pen hovered over her notepad. "And the children," Mr. Clint's face creased with something that looked like shame. "The boy Dean, I used to see him dragging these heavy black trash bags to his little red wagon. Took me a while to figure out what he was doing." "What was he doing?" Carla asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. "Collecting their empties, taking them to the bottle return machines at Kroger." Mr. Clint's voice cracked. "The more they drank, the more money he had. I'd see him and his sister sitting right there at the store entrance afterward, tearing into Lunchables like they hadn't eaten in days." The room went quiet. Even the expensive refrigerator seemed to stop humming. "I asked him about it once." Mr. Clint continued, "Asked if everything was okay at home. He just stammered something about being too busy playing to eat dinner." He looked at Carla, then at me. "That wasn't the truth, was it?" "No, it wasn't," Carla said. Carla made 3 more marks on her form. When she looked up, her expression remained professionally neutral and her knuckles had gone white around the pen. "Environment unsafe," she said aloud, checking a box. "Inadequate nutrition. Evidence of chronic neglect. I'm recommending immediate termination of parental custody pending criminal trial." Back at my apartment, I sat with my phone in my hand and a decision on my shoulders. I needed a shark, someone who could gut Joshua's legal team and make sure those kids never spent another night in that house. The name everyone whispered with equal parts fear and respect was Attorney Vance, the most effective family law attorney in the region. He didn't lose. He also didn't come cheap. But I'd already started preparing for this fight. While I was still in the hospital with Dean and Hannah, while my arm still throbbed from where Joshua had shoved me into the doorframe, I'd made a mental inventory of everything I owned that could be converted to cash. Yesterday afternoon, I'd walked into the pawn shop on 5th Street with my grandmother's diamond necklace. She'd given it to me on my 16th birthday, told me it was a family heirloom passed down from her mother. The gemstone wasn't huge, but it was flawless vintage-cut platinum setting. I'd worn it exactly twice. Once to her funeral, once to my nursing school graduation. The pawnbroker had examined it under his loupe for what felt like an eternity before looking up. $3,800 cash right now. I'd signed the paperwork without hesitation. The laptop was next. I'd posted it in the community resident group, a sleek high-end model. I just finished paying off last week. $900 in monthly installments. Finally mine. A sophomore college student showed up within an hour. Cash in hand. $900 gone in 30 seconds. But the espresso machine, God, that hurt. I stood in front of it for 10 minutes before I could bring myself to unplug it. It was a beautiful piece of engineering. Brushed stainless steel, Italian-made with a steam wand that produced microfoam so perfect it could make a hospital cafeteria coffee taste like a cafe in Milan. I'd bought it 2 years ago, right after I made the final payment on Mom's medical bills. Joshua had inherited all of Dad's life insurance money, $75,000. I'd asked him to help with Mom's hospital costs, just to split them. He'd laughed. That money is for investing in the future, he'd said, swirling bourbon in a crystal glass. And now here I was, selling the only thing I'd ever bought for myself. Not for bills, not for necessities, just for joy to clean up the mess his future had made for his children. A young man arrived to pick it up. Fresh out of college, first job, eager smile. He handed me $600 and thanked me profusely, saying it was a steal. I smiled and told him to enjoy it, then closed the door and stared at the empty counter. The outline was still visible, a clean rectangle in the dust. My brother didn't just exploit me, he was cruel to his own children. I steeled my resolve. Those kids would not spend one more day under his roof. Total funds, $5, $300 from sales, $7,500 from savings, $12,800. I walked into the law offices of Attorney Vance at 10 a.m. The receptionist led me to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the courthouse. Symbolic, I thought. Attorney Vance was a man in his early 50s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, with the kind of presence that made you sit up straighter. He didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Show me what you have." I slid the medical records across his desk. Dean's frostbite treatment, Hannah's hypothermia and asthma crisis, my own injury report from the ER. Then the photos, my bruised arm, the kid's hollow eyes, the screenshots I'd taken of Jane's Instagram stories, showing champagne bottles and party lights on, the same nights Mr. Clint described. Vance studied them in silence, removing his glasses halfway through. When he looked up, his expression was unreadable. "I can guarantee you win permanent custody," he said flatly. "I can also guarantee your brother serves time. The retainer is $9,000. I reached into my bag and pulled out the cash bills in neat stacks. I placed them gently on his mahogany desk. "Then let's begin," I said. He slid a contract across the desk. I signed this transaction. This exchange of every material thing I valued was purchasing a peaceful future for 2 children who'd never known one. The afternoon Carla Evans arrived at my duplex for the home study. She swept through the apartment with the precision of a drill sergeant, checking expiration dates on every carton of milk in the fridge, shaking the newly assembled bunk beds to test their sturdiness. I'd stayed up until midnight putting those beds together. My hands blistered from the Allen wrench. She paused in front of the kitchen counter, the empty space where the espresso machine used to be, and I saw her eyes linger there. Then she looked at the stack of receipts I'd left on the table. New bedding, children's clothes in the correct sizes, asthma medications, a humidifier for Hannah's room nightlight shaped like stars. Carla picked up the receipts, studied them, then set them down. She uncapped her pen, stamped past on her clipboard, and looked me in the eye. "You can pick up the children tomorrow morning." That nod, brief, professional, almost imperceptible, was the most valuable validation I'd ever received. Day 3 morning. Hannah had recovered faster than expected. Her oxygen saturation levels were stable, her breathing clear. The doctors were cautious. Her lungs would need monitoring, follow-up appointments, a strict medication schedule. But because I was a pediatric RN with the skills and training to manage her care, the hospital felt completely reassured, releasing her into my custody. Dean walked through my door first, Hannah's small hand in his. He looked around the apartment, the mismatched furniture, the coffee pot on the counter, cheap drip, nothing fancy, the empty space where something clearly used to be. Then he saw the bunk beds in the corner room, the quilts I'd bought in primary colors, the wooden toy chest already stocked with books and puzzles. His eyes wavered. He didn't cry. This kid had been trained not to, but I saw the crack in his armor. Hannah still weak, but smiling, lit up when she saw the 2 teddy bears on the bottom bunk. They were the latest models, the kind every kid in her class probably begged for. I'd seen her looking at them through a store window once, months ago, when I'd taken her and Dean for ice cream. She hadn't asked for one. She'd just looked. Now she had 2. "This one's yours," she said solemnly to Dean, handing him the blue bear. "We match." Dean took it, clutching it like a lifeline. I knelt down, meeting their eyes. "This is home now. For as long as you need it. Forever, if that's what you want." Dean looked at the empty counter again, then back at me. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. 2 weeks later, Jane made bail. Attorney Vance had already notified me of the conditions: no contact with victims or witnesses, and no public mention of the case. They were standard protective measures designed to shield the children from further trauma. Jane ignored them immediately. That evening, Dean was doing homework at the kitchen table when my phone exploded with notifications. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Jane had gone live on every platform simultaneously. I pulled up the stream. She sat in the living room of her mother's home, eyes rimmed with carefully applied red makeup to simulate crying. The comments were already rolling, and thousands of her followers tuning in for the performance. "I need to speak my truth," Jane began, her voice trembling. "I've been silent too long, and I can't let this continue. My children were taken from me by a jealous, vindictive woman who has always resented my happiness." My stomach dropped. My sister-in-law, Willow, continued saying my name like a curse, as a lonely, bitter spinster who couldn't stand to see me with a loving family. She lured my babies away with promises of toys and treats, then called the authorities with fabricated stories of neglect. The door code incident, a simple mistake. Kids forget things all the time. But she twisted it into something sinister. The comments lit up. Jane would never neglect her children. This is clearly a custody battle. So sad. Praying for you, babe. Stay strong. But just as many read who forgets their own kids outside. The aunt is a hero. Jane dabbed at her eyes. My children are scared and confused, being held by a woman who doesn't understand them. I'm their mother. I'm fighting to bring them home where they belong. The live stream ended. Within an hour, my social media was under siege. Messages flooded my inbox, most of them vicious. "Child stealer. You're disgusting. Give those kids back to their real mom." Someone found out where I worked. The hospital's main line started ringing, angry callers demanding the kidnapper nurse be fired immediately. Security had to disconnect the phones. I sat in the break room shaking while my coworkers whispered in the hallway. Some looked at me with sympathy, others with suspicion. Week 2. Day 3. 2 days later, 2 days after the live stream began. The call I feared finally came. I was summoned to HR immediately. I walked through the corridors feeling like I was heading to my execution, certain they were going to cut me loose to avoid the liability and bad press. I knocked on the HR director's door. "Come in, Willow." Inside, I found not just the HR director, but Dr. Grayson, chief of medicine, the man who'd hired me 5 years ago. A thick file sat on the desk between them. I sat down, hands folded in my lap, waiting for the blow. Dr. Grayson spoke first. We've reviewed the hospital admission records for Dean and Hannah Hart. We've also reviewed the security footage from the ER showing your brother's physical assault on you in the hallway. And we've seen the social media campaign being waged against you by Jane Hart. I nodded, throat tight. I understand if you need to. We know the truth. The HR director interrupted. Her expression was steel. We know you did the right thing, and we're not going to let an influencer with a vendetta destroy the career of one of our best nurses. I blinked. What Dr. Grayson slid the file toward me. The hospital's legal department has prepared a countersuit for defamation and libel. Jane Hart made specific false claims about your character and your professional conduct. She did so publicly to an audience of over 100,000 people, causing direct harm to this institution and to you personally. We have documentation, witnesses, and video evidence to refute every claim she made. We're going to bury her, the HR director added quietly. I stared at the file, then at them. You're supporting me, Willow, Dr. Grayson said, and his voice was gentler than I'd ever heard it. You've dedicated to this hospital. You've worked double shifts, covered holidays, trained new staff, and saved countless lives. When your mother was sick, you didn't miss a single shift. You're the kind of nurse we build a hospital around. So yes, we're supporting you unequivocally. Treason. I wept with relief. They were shielding me. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place the very next afternoon. The text came from an unknown number while I was giving Hannah her nebulizer treatment. You don't know me, but I was at the party the night your nephew and niece were locked out. I need to tell you something about the door code. My heart stopped. I stepped into the hallway and called the number. A woman answered, voice hushed, nervous. I can't give my name, she said, but I was friends with Jane. And after seeing her on that live stream lying through her teeth, I couldn't stay quiet. What happened, I asked. At the party, Joshua was showing off. He just installed this fancy smart lock system and wanted everyone to see how advanced it was. He pulled out his phone and demonstrated changing the code remotely. Made a big deal about how secure it was, how he could control it from anywhere. Everyone went, ooh, wow, and he loved the attention. He was drunk, so proud of himself. And then he just kept drinking. I don't think he ever sent the new code to Dean. I sat down hard on the hallway floor. It wasn't an accident, I whispered. No, the woman said it was negligence born of arrogance. I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. You're saying it now, I told her. That's what matters. I thanked her, ended the call, and immediately forwarded the information to Attorney Vance. Attorney Vance moved with predatory speed. He subpoenaed the smart lock company's server logs, using the witness's tip as grounds. The data was damning. It showed that at 11:47 p.m. on January 14th, the code had been changed remotely via Joshua's iPhone to 8264. Dean hadn't forgotten the code. His father had changed it and never told him. Armed with this evidence and the recording of Jane's live stream, Vance went to court. He presented the video as proof of bail violation. The judge issued an immediate order, and police arrested Jane in the middle of preparing for another broadcast. The footage of her being handcuffed while screaming about her platform went viral, turning the tide of public opinion overnight. 6 months later, the courtroom was packed for the trial. Jane's high-priced lawyer tried to argue that the house was merely messy, but Carla Evans destroyed that defense on the stand. She described the lack of food, the mattress on the floor, and the $18,000 wine cabinet in a house where children were starving. I have never, in 2 decades of this work, seen a home where the alcohol was better cared for than the children, Carla stated. That's not neglect, that's calculated torture. The sentencing was severe. Joshua Hart received 5 years in state prison for child endangerment and felony neglect. Jane received 2 years. Both had their parental rights terminated permanently. To avoid a crushing civil lawsuit, Joshua accepted a plea deal. He would liquidate the mansion and luxury cars to pay off debts. The remaining equity, approximately $300,000, would be transferred directly into a trust fund for Dean and Hannah managed by me. Additionally, 40% of his future income post-incarceration would be automatically garnished for child support. I sat in the courtroom, watching my brother lose everything, feeling no joy, only the immense quiet relief of safety. The suburbs smelled different, cleaner somehow, like fresh-cut grass and possibility. I stood in the backyard of our new house, watching Dean pitch baseballs to Aaron, while Hannah drew chalk flowers on the patio. The house wasn't huge, but it was ours. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen with enough counter space for a proper coffee maker, and a backyard big enough for a swing set and a vegetable garden. 2 years had passed since the trial. 2 years since I'd sold my grandmother's necklace and my espresso machine. The court had auctioned Joshua's mansion, and while the trust fund secured the children's future, I'd used a portion of the settlement to buy this house outright. No mortgage, no landlord, just a deed with my name on it. I'd been promoted to head nurse at Mercy General 6 months ago. The raise wasn't enormous, but it was enough. Enough for soccer cleat, art supplies, and Friday night pizza. And then there was Dr. Aaron Mitchell, ER, attending physician, cat lover, accidental hero. He treated me that night in the ER, signed the injury report that helped jail my brother, and then simply never left our orbit. What started as professional courtesy visits evolved into helping with homework, bringing takeout, and eventually becoming the father figure these kids desperately needed. A week after the kids came to live with me, once the initial chaos had settled, Hannah had asked about Snow, the cat they'd left behind. We posted flyers, though. I had little hope. But miracles happen. Mr. Clint called a few days later. He had found the scrawny orange tabby shivering on his porch and had been feeding him in his garage. Aaron drove us to pick him up. When Snow meowed pitifully at the sight of Dean, the boy who had held everything together finally broke down and cried. Aaron had put a hand on his shoulder and simply said, "He's home now. You all are now." Snow was fat and spoiled, sleeping in sunbeams and demanding treats. Dean was 13 taller and playing shortstop with a wicked curveball. The frostbite scars on his fingers had faded to faint white lines. Hannah was 9. Her asthma fully controlled her laughter, filling the hallways that used to be so quiet. On my birthday, Dean handed me a small box wrapped in newspaper. Inside was a silver keychain engraved with the word home. "Thank you for opening the door that night," he said, his voice cracking slightly. "And thank you for selling your coffee machine for me. I knew about that for a long time." I hugged them both tight, knowing every sacrifice, every scary moment, every dollar sold and spent had been worth it. I clutched the keychain, a symbol totally opposite to the cold smart lock that started it all. We had finally found a truly safe,